Firstly, thank you very much for coming to this event on one of the hottest days on the calendar in the UK. So if anybody feels like keeling over, maybe just raise your hand or tell your neighbor and we can rush you over to some cold water. But I hope that's not necessary. Certainly, the air conditioning is holding up so far, almost unknown, but it's doing it. So we've got a really nice, cool room here and a cool group of people in our audience. If you're online, well, I hope you're cool where you are as well, although I know that air conditioning doesn't really feature in British homes. Nevertheless, try and relax, enjoy, and we'll have a good evening. Firstly, though, I must ask you a question. Have you been on holiday? Who's been on holiday? Oh my gosh. Very few people. Now a whole group of people suddenly. I've been on holiday, and I'm going to bore you, not with my holiday snaps, but with my holiday experiences. I went to Greece, and despite being the country, the southernmost in Europe in some ways, it was a very pleasant experience. Of course, in Greece, there's lots of stuff about history. So naturally, somebody as old as me thoroughly enjoyed it. But I actually went to Crete, a big, long island, 120 miles long in the south of Greece. And there is a history going back to Minoan times. And the Minoans were supposed to be the first European civilization. From their base in Crete, they spread out around the Mediterranean, and then they were followed by numerous others, including the Phoenicians. Of course, the Egyptians were running alongside them and so on, but they did lots of things around the Mediterranean. And so there are lots of historical remains there as well. So I saw the super fortress, should I say fortress, or the ruins anyway, of the Minoan city of Knossos, which is supposedly where bullfight took place, bullfights of a different kind. And this was supposed to be legend until in 1900, an archaeological team from Britain discovered the palace of Knossos on a hillside, and the archaeological myth came true. Now, amongst the myths to do with Knossos were ones of bull leaping. So the Minoans, with their big fleets and so on, went around the Mediterranean and they extracted taxes. And allegedly, some of the taxes included a group of boys and girls each year, teenagers, to go to Crete, and some of them became bull dancers, which sounds nice, but it wasn't so benevolent. They were supposed to go down, provide gladiatorial entertainment by jumping over the bull. It's from that, it could be, that we get our expression of taking the bull by the horns, because that was the easiest way, get the bull, do a somersault onto its back, and then flip again to a catcher at the back of the bull. Very, very dangerous. And there was a high rate of casualties, as you can imagine. But the Greeks valued athleticism and fit young people and so on. They were also very warlike. They had to be, against all their neighbors who were city-states vying for power. And over in Greece, there were many civilizations going on at that time, Athens, Sparta, and so on. The Minoans were there from 2000 BC, so that's 4,000 years ago, through till about 1500 BC. And that is when they were wiped out, or at least all their shore settlements were wiped out by an enormous earthquake, a volcano on an island called Santorini. It was called Thera, but it was Santorini. And the tidal wave, or tsunami as we'd call it now, wiped out an enormous area of the shoreline of Crete. So that was almost it for the Minoan civilization, except that they revived, kept going, and then some of the people who they'd extracted taxes from, boys and girls and so on, came and attacked them. That was 1450 BC. You don't want to know all that, but you do want to know that round about 450 BC, these battles continued. There were the Spartans, the Athenians, and so on. There was also the enormous empire of the Persians. And the Greeks, the Minoans in particular, have been annoying the Persians by stealing business, trade, and so on from them. The Persians decided to attack. By that time, the Minoans were no longer a big power. Athens was. A big Persian fleet of ships went to attack Athens. And they were there, the Athens sent for help from their would-be rival, Sparta. The Spartans wanted to get themselves together before they went to the help of the Athenians. They were too late. The battle had taken place, and little Athens had defeated the enormous Persian navy. Yippee! So an Athenian soldier was sent to run from the battlefield back to Athens with the news of this enormous victory. The victory was at a place called Marathon. And it's from there that we got the name of Marathon. I don't know if it was 26.2 miles away from Athens, but it was, that sort of distance. And the tradition has continued, not since 450 BC, but much, much more recent times. And that made me think about the lady here, who has been reenacting that, you could say, in my imagination, and running many of these marathons. Now, we're very fortunate to have Jillian Moore with us today, and please stop her from running out of the room because she might not come back till she's done 26 miles. But what I know is that we have got a marathon in our industry, haven't we? We've got a marathon where things are always changing, ever faster, ever more. And Jillian has experienced at least two sides of that. She's had very senior roles in big business, and she'll tell us about that. And then she decided to get a more, what I would call it, a more balanced life, a work-life balance, whatever that means. And she'll tell us a little bit more about that too. But I want to know, basically, I want to know if she's got in her career plan for the future, ball jumping or somersaults. Jillian, it's more about your exciting story.
Thank you. Not sure where to go after that. There is no ball jumping, just to be a spoiler. I'm not going to take up ball jumping.
Okay.
I'm also going to talk a lot about the state of the IT industry. I will say now, it is not as bad as having to send our children to certain death with balls. So just to get that out there as well. I strongly suspect that I was invited to give this session just so Jillian could tell that story about how it happened. This is not all about marathon running, but I will throw a little bit in, and I'm happy to take any questions for anybody who wants to talk about marathon running at the end. So for everybody in the room, everybody online, very nice to meet you. This will be more about the state of the IT industry and maybe a teeny little bit. But very nice to meet you all. This on the screen you can see is not typical, yay, I finished a marathon, it's the end of London, it's all amazing. This is a picture that I took at the top of Heartbreak Hill in Boston last November. No, in fact, not last November, it was this March. This was probably the hardest moment I have had in many, many, many years. And what you can't see is cropped out of this picture is a picture of me in tears taking a selfie in front of this banner. This is about 21 miles through Boston Marathon. I'll talk a little bit about why I've been running marathons in a moment. I am not a natural marathon runner. It has been a challenge for me. And this was the moment in all of that where I thought, can I actually do this? Can I actually keep going? This was the moment that nearly broke me. So I didn't want to start with a happy, this is amazing picture. I wanted to start with, this is real. This is Heartbreak Hill. This is the real 3 miles uphill that has nearly broken me and everybody around me. What happens from here? And that's how I want to talk about the IT industry today. It has been a tough, tough few months and years. I want to talk a little bit about what's happened and then where do we go from here? How do we get over the hill and maybe make the most of some of the downhill recovery that might come? So, as I was introduced, my name is Jillian Moore. On the left, you see my professional photo by day, by previous life. I am a digital transformation consultant. I have created businesses, I've run businesses, I've transformed businesses. Almost all of my career has been in big consulting companies. So I've worked in digital agencies, I've worked in big SI companies, I've worked in big four situations, I've had local roles, I've had global roles. I've done a lot of work all around the world and held some big P&Ls and all that kind of thing. I've been doing that for nearly 30 years. It's a long time, the amount of change we have in our industry. The picture on the other side is another version of me. That version of me is the good bit after Heartbreak Hill, when I finished my Abbott 6-star medal, which is what you get when you run all 6 of the big marathons around the world that are sponsored by a company called Abbott. And that's big because I'm also chair of an organisation called London Sport, which is a charity. It's a not-for-profit. I've been working with them for 6 years. They're based in the capital and they exist to get people active for the purposes of mental health and social good. And I have an incredibly strong belief that looking after mental health, particularly if you work in the IT industry, is fundamentally important now more than ever, because it is a difficult world and everything that we can do to look after our mental health is really, really important. And so about 6 months ago, I took the opportunity to leave my role as the global advisory lead at a company called Avanade, which is part of Accenture. They were having a big restructure. There was an opportunity for me to do something different. And I launched into actually trying to run my Abbott 6-star medal within 8 months, which is the fastest time you can do it, which meant running 6 marathons within 8 months. It was a lot. I did it. I finished it at London. They had a lot of up and downs, but it really gave me a chance to think more about mental health and helping others and doing something different and not just the day job that I've insisted on for a long time. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about the IT industry, where it's been, where it's going, but also focus a little bit on what that means for our mental health and what it means for surviving, thriving and being resilient and making the most of it as it goes forward. Because I'll tell you now, after nearly 30 years in the industry, I was done. I was absolutely done. I was tired. I'd been through acquisitions. I'd been through mergers. I'd been through restructures. I'd been through my own job being at risk. I'd been through global politics, the whole thing. I was done. Human beings are not designed to deal with the amount of change that we have in this industry at the moment. And I was talking to Jillian earlier. I'm just starting about the fact I need to go back and do a real job at some point in the future. But at the moment, I'm very firmly in that sabbatical of doing something else and finding something for my own mental health. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about what I see happening in the IT industry on a global basis and a little bit about how that refers to the UK. A little bit about what the implications of that are. I'm not giving away the secret. It's all about constant and continuous change. A little bit about what strategies we can deploy to get through that and be resilient and help ourselves. I've already done the pitch for well-being. Well-being does matter. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then hopefully give some tips and some pointers that everybody can think about what do you want to do for yourselves? You know, everybody's at a different stage of their career, different state of mind, but hopefully there's something in here that you can think about what you want to do yourself in this kind of environment. So starting with the global industry piece, lots of things going on in the world. This will come as no surprise to anybody. We have technology change. I have to tell you now, I think I'm probably sponsored every time I can get AI or Gen AI into a sentence. You know, somebody puts a penny in my money box and I make my money off the back of that. That didn't really exist. The Gen AI piece didn't exist 18 months ago. I remember I sit on the BCS membership committee along with a couple of people in this room who was there before. I remember us having a big debate about 18 months ago about whether this was actually something real or whether it was all hype. I don't know if you remember that big conversation. It's real. It's not going anywhere. It's very real. It's disrupting the world. We are moving in a world where machines are going to take over a lot more work than they do today because of AI and Gen AI. Also, the green transition. It's very tempting to feel at the moment with world politics that ESG is dead, that environmental things are dead, that we're defocusing on it. Many companies are saying, you know, I've got other priorities because times are hard. It's not dead. It's very real. What happens about energy in the world, what happens about energy and resources, what happens about what we do in our companies, this is huge because it will save money, it will change the world again. And so it has not gone away. Do not think it's gone away. We have also demographic shifts. I used to stand up here and talk about 7 generations. There's 8 now. We're into 8 generations. It is a very real problem now dealing with all the different generations that are in the workforce. I sat down with my CEO at London Sport last week and I said, what's the one wish list if you were doing training for your leadership team? And she said, my leadership team need training in how to deal with Gen Z in the workplace. Because none of us on our leadership team are Gen Z, and this is causing us very real problems now. Trying to create an environment in the workplace that works for everybody, super tough, and will get to be a bigger problem as time goes by. Also on there, we have geoeconomic fragmentation. The world is changing shape rapidly in terms of who has the economic power and who doesn't. I'll come on to this in a minute. That is also massively affecting. If you come from a background like mine in big consulting, big tech, lots of companies are global now. All this economic change is completely changing, fundamentally changing the way that they've set up their businesses, causing some big challenges. And then economic uncertainty. We are in very interesting and difficult times. Who knows what's going to happen next? And certainly the IT industry is looking at that and going, who's going to buy? Who's going to buy what we do? What kind of price point do we need to get at? Because we are essential, but we're not essential. How is that going to affect us? So 5 huge factors that are changing the world at the moment. More specifically, because, you know, I can't really do this without having a picture of Trump on a slide. It's not going to happen. There are some very specific things happening today in the world that are affecting the IT industry. We have the war in Ukraine, which 2.5 years ago when it started, immediately changed the shape of European nearshoring for IT companies. All the nearshoring that was being done in Ukraine, Belarus, out in Russia, everything, there was a big bet that was being placed there, dead in the water. Even Poland is becoming a challenge. So the whole nearshoring concept in Europe, managed by what's happening in Ukraine, one tiny bit of the implication of what's happening in Ukraine, but a very real impact on the IT industry. We have just war generally, hard to find one picture that comes across with what's happening. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but if you look at the map of the world at the moment, there's a great one doing the rounds from Flight Tracker that now shows the massive gap, the no-fly zone for air corridors across the Middle East with what's happened in Israel and Qatar and so on. The world is being cut in 2. Again, if you're an IT company that works on any kind of broader than one nation basis, which most of them do, massive implications. The world is genuinely being cut in pieces by what's happening with world wars. And who's going to join up with who? That's going to affect who you do business with. China. About 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, the big trend in the tech industry was, yay, China, we're going in there. We're opening up in China. There's massive opportunity. Everyone's out. Not happening for various reasons. One is, as the world launches more towards a war footing, it's very risky and dangerous to go into China. China want to do it themselves. They want to be self-sufficient. There's less money, there's less opportunity there. The other problem is the other part of it, Trump. Love him or loathe him, I'm not going to pass an opinion here, and I'm not going to talk about that. But some of the things that he's doing, obviously, around trade policy and so on, are affecting the way that companies are doing business. For instance, if you're a US-owned company, you are not going to go do work in China now. It's not going to happen. My old world of Accenture, they wouldn't go there. They're a US-aligned company. They're not going to go and do it. The other thing that is changing is that Trump's domestic first policy is changing the way that IT companies are working. Rather than going and doing offshoring, companies are going to invest in places like Tennessee. They're going to go they're going to go close shoring in the US because it's too hard to do business combined with somewhere else. So the world is shrinking in that way. I was talking to a recruitment consultant the other day, and he said to me, he said, you know what's happening in the world? Big companies are now pulling away from APAC because of this, because of China, because of Trump, because of war. They're pulling out of APAC. They're pulling out of offshoring. They're pulling out of the business they had going down there because it is too hard at this point in time. And companies are moving away from having presidents of EMEA and presidents of APAC and presidents of US. They're going back to having presidents of US and presidents of everything else. Really interesting sign of the way that some of the big companies are starting to think. The splodge in the middle, COVID, our best friend. Gosh, didn't the IT industry do well out of COVID? Wonderfully well. Resulted in too many people in the industry, too high salaries. Everybody who moved jobs during COVID could name their own price, write their own check. We're feeling the outcomes of that now as companies are downsizing quite significantly. And also the impact that COVID's had on supply chains. There is a world food shortage. There are problems all around the world around supply chain, which impacts the IT industry. Because if companies are having to focus on that, they're not spending money on IT, even if that could be a solution. So big problems, big hangovers from COVID. And then the last one on there, Brexit. It happened ages ago. We all had our views then, but it's still here. It's still affecting us. A lot of the laws from Brexit actually came into effect in the last few months, blocking trade. Again, back to problems for European-owned companies. So US ones are dealing with domestic. If you're in the UK, lots of red tape now, lots of different things to consider about how you do business. So big global events changing what's happening in this industry, absolutely massively. What does it mean for IT? Well, it means disruption is the new norm and will be for many years. My point about continual change. This has never been an industry where you go into it and do the same job for 30 years, but it really, really isn't now. I was hiring prompt engineers, I was hiring quantum specialists, all this kind of stuff. They weren't jobs 18 months ago. They just weren't. And now they're a thing. So disruption is the norm. The next one on there, AI, automation, hybrid work. Said the robots are coming. There is a change of work that people are doing. And according to the World Economic Forum, by 2030, 12% of what we do as humans now will be done by machines, more. So 34% of every task that is done at work by 2030 will be done by AI or a machine. And another 30% of it will be done by humans in combinations with AI and machines. Massive shift. You might think 12% is not a huge number. It is when you think about how much work is being done. Huge shift away from humans. The half-life of skills, I mentioned it. To be brutally honest, in tech now, if you've been doing a skill for 18 months, 2 years, it's probably out of date. That's how fast things are running. This used to say 2 to 3 years. Now it's only 2 years and it's getting more rapid. There is no room to be a specialist in one thing and do that for the rest of your life in this industry. It changes that quickly, which changes the whole concept of what's experience in this industry. I can't go out and hire somebody who's got 10 years as a prompt engineer. Time doesn't matter anymore. So we have to redefine what is experience and what is expertise, which will cause a massive change, and that's that generational point. And then the fourth one, industry conversions. What is an IT industry anyway? We wrestle with this quite a bit, again, when we have our moments in our BCS committees. Who should be part of BCS? What is an IT industry? IT is everywhere, no? Especially if 60% of work is going to be done by machines or by people with machines. How do we even know what this is anymore? So there is an identity crisis here that's just going to get bigger. And what does this mean? It means job losses. Let's be honest. Let's be brutal. I'm getting all the bad news out of the way, by the way. It gets happier as we go further. This is an awesome site that's worth a look. Trueup.io. They keep track globally of all the announced layoffs in the IT business, whether it's SMEs, whether it's big companies, whatever. It's a great little clickable. It does not do it justice on screen. You can go in, you can click, you can see different companies, you can see trends. If anyone's a data lover, straight geek out there, this is a site for you. Big things are happening. Huge things are happening. Microsoft are up to about 12,000 people and counting in terms of layoffs this year. Panasonic got rid of 10,000. Intel 15,000. Dell 12,500. It's not just the big tech companies either. Brands are doing it. Walmart got rid of 1,500 people not very long ago. The small companies you'll see up there, Bumble, 240 people, doesn't sound much. That's like a third of their company. There are huge cuts happening in this industry. There are huge layoffs. There is a glut of people, if you look on LinkedIn, who are talking about finding their next role, because it's very, very difficult. There's a lot of layoffs. It's not just layoffs as well. There is another problem, which is the intake of new talent. Just by example, the big four accounting stroke consulting firms who've been part of the holy grail of the IT consulting industry for a long while. 2023, this is how much they cut their graduate intake schemes. That was 2023. It's worse. It's getting worse because they see that AI and technology can replace what these graduates did. Great for them. Save some cost. Where's the talent of tomorrow going to come from? How are people going to get into this industry? How are people going to get their start? I started as a graduate. I got everything out of a graduate scheme. That's not going to be the future for taking in new talent. There's an issue with how we're getting new people into this industry as well. So who are the winners and who are the losers? This is just my view. But at the moment, I would say the losers are definitely big tech, Microsoft, Oracle, Google, Meta, Salesforce, all cutting people, all trying to work out how they deal with this global stage. They're affected by everything, all dealing with how they're going to automate and hit that price point. Difficult place to be at the moment. Big consulting, my old world, same. Global companies having to rethink their offshoring models, having to rethink their intakes, having to rethink their talent. Big problem in those companies. And SMEs, they're struggling as well, small companies, because they can't cope with this talent change. You know, the skill set's changing every 5 minutes. If you're a small company, it's really hard to keep pace with that. It's really hard to keep pace with what your buyers want. And even then, your buyers don't have that much money anymore. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Undecided, people who are in the middle, in-house tech, I mentioned Walmart. There is a trend happening to take more tech back in-house. Because if you're going to have people with machines doing things, then you probably want more of a skill set in-house rather than coming from consultancies or elsewhere. So big intake there. But if you take people in-house, the skill set problem becomes real. How do you deal with the fact that skills are changing all the time? Government, traditionally the place that IT goes when the world gets hard. The government's hand will feed us, right? I grew up in the world of Logica, CGI. We made everything off the back of government. Hard. It's a challenge for them to keep pace. We've got mad machinery of government changes happening all over the place. The Doge cuts from the US have been slightly more quietly mirrored over here with some of the things that our government are doing. There are cutbacks, there are things happening. The government's an interesting place, but it has its challenges. And the winners, well, at the moment, the winners seem to be the private equity firms. So at the moment, the private equity firms have decided that now is the time to place their bets for the next few years. You're going to see a lot of PE-backed, AI-focused, small organizations springing up. And in about 3 years' time, it's going to be a game of happy families where the bigger PE companies are going to come in and collect their sets and build something else. There's a lot of money being backed on this at the moment. A lot of action, a lot of PE companies who want to invest. The interesting thing is, though, they're lengthening their horizons. And somebody else I was talking to last week told me that the PE firms have gone from sort of 3 to 5 years to a 5 to 8 year horizon, because they see that they're investing to weather the storm that's happening at the moment. And that 5 to 8 years' time is going to be the prime time for all these new things that they've been built to be swept up and stuck together into something new. So very interesting things happening in the world of PE. What does this mean for skills? Fascinating report if you get a chance to read it. The World Economic Forum presented in April their Future of Jobs report for 2025, talking about the fastest growing jobs. If you look at that, top 15, 12 of them would be claimed to be in the IT industry, all growing rapidly. This is where the opportunity starts to come in. The ones that are declining are the very traditional ones that you would see could be replaced by AI, automation, all that sort of thing. But hey, if you want to get into big data or AI, it's all up there. Interestingly, software and app dev, still high, still growing. It's going to change shape, but it's still a big place to be. So if you're thinking about where your career goes next, interesting list to go and have a look at. And back to my point of what is a tech industry anyway. The same report talks about how companies out there across all industries see tech changing their world, or see everything changing their world in the future. 86% of companies out there believe that AI is going to change their world. And in fact, if you look at all these bubbles, apart from the ones to do with energy and new materials, they're all tech related. Huge, huge opportunity, but it's different than the opportunity we've been looking at for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It really is. It is very data driven. IT isn't traditional anymore, it's mainstream. So this is where it's heading. Everyday use of AI and data in the middle of everything. Agile workforces. It's going to be much more fluid, much more flexible, much more moving people around. Constant learning. The skills you have today will not be the skills you need tomorrow. A constant learning mindset is going to be absolutely key. And the rise of purpose-driven work, because when the world changes so much, your employees, your people, your teams, you yourself are going to look for a different motivation. You're going to look for a purpose to do this. The shape of a career is going to change. It's not going to become being a lifelong expert in the thing you do, because that's not going to happen anymore. It's going to be about finding your purpose and doing things that align to it. And while that might not be a bigger shift for individuals, that's huge for companies and the way that they think about people and their employees. Core skills. So if being an expert in a particular technology or a particular skill doesn't matter anymore, what should you look at? Have a look at this. Same WEF report. I'm very obsessed with it. Can't recommend it enough. Well, the core skills that you need now today. Number 1, analytical thinking. Number 2, resilience. Number 3, leadership. Number 4, creative thinking. Number 5, motivation. It's only at number 6 when we get to tech. These are the attributes that anybody working in this industry today needs to think about above anything. I always say when I'm hiring people, I can teach people anything, but they need to have these core skills to survive in this world. So again, if you're thinking about your career and what you do and who you are, how do you see yourself with these skills? How do you develop these skills? Because these are the ones that are going to get you through what is happening now and in the next 5 years in this industry. Because you can see on the right what's needed, okay? If you don't walk out of this room thinking, well, we're all going to get into AI, then that's what's going to happen. But beyond that, creativity, resilience, curiosity, huge word, curiosity, it's all still there. How do you get yourself in the mindset that that's actually your career? That's your purpose, not your tech skill. I talk a lot, I do a fair bit with some universities, and I've had the opportunity recently to talk to them. It's really hard to get across to students who are doing a tech degree that actually the tech stuff that they're learning is probably irrelevant the minute they walk out of the door. But what they really need are these core skills. How do you teach these in a university course? That's another reason why I think one of the entry points into here is not just going to be what we do with students, but also career transitions. So I've done a lot of work with a company called the Athlete Career Transition Company in the past. They, unsurprisingly, including the name, they help athletes transfer into different careers. You'd be amazed how many of these attributes are in ex-Olympic athletes. Incredible. I've had some amazing people come across. So how you think about people's backgrounds and who you hire is going to change, because these are the things that are important. So what does this mean for us as humans? This photo is very personal to me. The person who I now realise, putting into this slide, looks like she's been beamed down in a ghostly presence on the right-hand side, is actually my great aunt when she worked in the mill. So I come from a town called Bolton, north of England. Bolton was the home of the original Industrial Revolution. Everything came from there. The mills were built, the town changed, the town was built upon it. And people like my great aunt and her friends there, who quite scarily in this photo are probably not far off my age today, genuinely, this was their life. And, I was saying to my friend on the train in, she would not believe my life today and what I do and what I specialise in. I'm not sure I could explain my career to her if she was still alive. But the Industrial Revolution changed the world. It changed the way that people lived, it changed the way that people thought, it changed the way people made money, everything. And this is from my mother's side. The other half of my family comes from Nottingham, which was the home of the Luddites. Interesting times in my house. The Luddites anti the Industrial Revolution, in denial, shouldn't happen. We need to stay where we are. It's going to break everybody. What's going to happen to the jobs for these people who work the mills, the wefters and the weavers and all that kind of stuff? Keep it going. As we know, the Luddites lost. We have to think about this with what's happening with the IT industry now. The people who sit in it and say, I do my job, I'm doing my skill, this is my thing, I'm a wefter, I'm a weaver, I'm this, they're going to find it really hard, because that is not the future. The people who embrace it and go with the change and make the most of it, they're the people who are going to have successful lives in the IT industry over the next 5, 10, 15 years. I love my great aunt, but I think today has got a huge amount more opportunity. When she was standing there when that photo was taken in probably the 60s. Some of you have probably seen this before. This is the good old Kubler-Ross change curve. Sarah gets wafted out at everything. It's okay. But what happens when the rate of change exceeds the rate of being able to cope through the Kubler-Ross curve? Because that's where we are. This is kind of dead. You won't get through this before another change comes in this industry. Before you know it, there'll be quantum, meta, whatever happening. You won't have time to get through this. We are in a world of constant change. And that's seriously hard for human beings. But everybody in this industry who is feeling this, everybody in this industry is feeling this. Everybody, I'm sure, in this room has had a moment where they've felt, whether it's overwhelmed, whether it's too much, whether it's what do I do next, whether it's where do I go, whether it's why am I here? I've felt it a lot. That's why I now run marathons. But it's a common feeling for everybody in this industry that we do not talk about enough. Because it's also an industry where everybody puts on a face and says, you know, I do my thing and I'm this and I'm that, and it's tech and we're not emotional and we don't do this, that, the other. Bad idea. That's how humans get burnout, anxiety, fatigue, question of who you actually are. What's your identity? Because remember, I said your identity is not your technical skill anymore. It's too much. It's too much for people. And that's when we get to the point where well-being matters in this industry. And if you're a leader, it's even harder. Because how do you do this? You can't manage in traditional ways anymore. Just said you've got multiple generations, you've got multiple things happening, you've got constant change, you're struggling yourself. The report out there says you might not even be there anyway, because middle management is the one that's been biggest affected by all those job cuts we talked about. Everyone's gone, let's strip them out. They don't do anything. No, with this, 41% of companies, if you read a Confo report that was out, 41% of companies have slashed their middle management. Yeah, there's this problem. We've got to help people. We had a group in BCS, which was an employers working group to talk about what employers needed. And the BCS wants to get more insights what was needed. And we started off with, well, this tech skill, that tech skill. No. It was about how do we help our people deal with remote working and being connected? It was how do we help people with their well-being and what's going on? It's like, how do we help people reskill? This is the problem. The problem is not the tech skill. The problem is how do we help our people? It's a wake-up call for learning and development. Because most companies don't have L&D that can cope with this at all. So, how do you cope? Some of you may have seen this before as well. 7 C's of resilience. There's a few things on there. Character, own your own values. If anybody in the room or online has never done a values exercise for themselves, do it. Know your own values. Nothing is allowed to compromise your values. And so as you go through this turmoil, having your own values is something that you can checkpoint against. Competence and confidence, look for other things to do. This is why I run marathons. This is why I work with London Sport, because when I look at my day job and I go, that's too much, I have another challenge. I think every single person should take on a challenge that they're not sure that they can do. It doesn't have to be a marathon. But taking on a challenge outside of your core piece of work that you are not sure that you can do gives you life, gives you meaning, gives you confidence, gives you some of these C's. It gives you confidence, It gives you control over something that you can do. I happen to like running because it's coping, but think about how you cope with stress as well. We talk at London Sport about activity. Different people have got different things. But thinking about that is important. And offering your own experience to the world. Talk about it. Do something. This industry sucks people in. And it's easy to say, I've got no time. Believe me, I have no time. I'm the world's busiest person. But I would not give up the stuff I do with London Sport for anything. Because for me, that is so important and so rewarding and so different that when I've had a terrible thing going on over here, I have somewhere to go that makes me feel better. So there's a few things in here. I'm going to get killed on time, so I'm going to have to speed up. Always my problem. But move from fear to curiosity. Reframe things. Don't be fearful of things. Think about curiosity. Be curious. Embrace that openness. Focus on what you can control. There's some things you can't, let them go. I normally have a picture of Frozen in here, let them go. But there will be things you can control, and look at those and focus on them. Build some small habits, that's small. Can't change everything overnight. Leverage your peer support, your community, your company. Normally at this point, I'd ask people, how many of your companies have got employee support schemes? If anybody works for a bigger company, you will have. Nobody ever uses them. They're there to help. I personally have had therapy sessions through them twice to help me through problems. They're brilliant. Use the resources that are available to you. And use what you're thinking about to drive your learning. Always learn, always change, always think about where's your skill going, not where's your skill today. Back to the marathon. Resilience is not endurance. Endurance means putting up with something that is going on. Resilience means growing from it, making the most of it, seizing it, changing it, embracing it, taking it, go forwards. If you're feeling down about this, and I appreciate given the first half of my conversation, people might have walked in feeling okay and now feel down. Think resilience, don't think endurance. And that's where we come back to the marathons. I mean, there's some great blogs out there about how marathons help you in business. There's a gentleman called Carl Hoods who works for DCIT who wrote an amazing one that's posted on LinkedIn a few months ago. If you want to go look at that, he's a far more competent marathon runner than I am. And there's some great stuff in it. But for me, resilience didn't come from one marathon. Resilience came from 8 marathons. I'm never going to be Paula Radcliffe. I'm never going to run a sub 3-hour marathon. I am what I am at marathons. But learning how to adapt and understand myself so I can get through 6 of them in 8 months, that's resilience. It's a different mindset. It's not about racing others. It's not about pushing one thing. It's about how do you build up that resilience? How do you learn from yourself? How do you change? How do you develop, do things different? People who know me will also know if there's anyone online, I love a good Spider-Man quote. I can never get away without having a Spider-Man quote. There's going to be a new social contract at work. There's 2 reasons Spider-Man's on there. The first one is if you are a leader and you lead people at work, the favourite thing here is with great power comes great responsibility. You are responsible for helping you people through this sort of situation. You're responsible for helping to redefine success. You're responsible for looking at people's attributes and not their core skills, not their tech skills. Look wider. Look at what people could do if they've got the attributes for it. And you're responsible for thinking about well-being. And even if it's not your natural place, there are other people who can help you. The other reason Spider-Man's up there is because he also was about we're only ever one choice away from a different life path. And that's a good thing. If you learn, you develop, this industry is not static. You can go wherever you want in it. So what you can do, starting today, understand your own strengths and values, your attributes, your core values. Do a values exercise. Know who you are beyond your tech skills in the context of some of the things I've talked about. Develop a continuous learning habit. It's now, it's the future. You have to get in the mindset of always learning. Normalize talking about well-being. Normalize sharing your own stories. Normalize talking about what you do to cope. And upskill in adaptability, not just tools. Tool skilling is kind of easy. And I'll leave you with actually 2 final thoughts, because it depends where you are in your career and in your head. You might be somebody who is really struggling with this at the moment. You might be feeling the question of what do I do next? This industry is horrendous. Where am I going? Have I been let go? Is my job at risk? And so on. Winston Churchill, if you're going through hell, keep going. Because there are so many jobs out there. You know, there was a slide in there, I didn't actually talk about it, but it said on the slide, there's 97 million jobs lost, but there's something like 170 million being created. They're just in different skill sets. So go find them. And if you're in the room going, well, I'm all right. I do my thing. I don't know what you're talking about, Jillian. Nonsense. It's all good. Crack on. I'll leave you with the amazing Joan Rivers. He said, any form of complacency is the kiss of death for any professional. You can't hide from this. It's going to change. I'm going to stop there. I'm happy to take any questions, any thoughts, any challenges, except I will not discuss Trump and politics. We were going to see, I think people online can ask questions as well, but the person who's monitoring online has just disappeared. But I'll start within the room. Yeah. Who's got any questions? Everyone's just dazzled. I mean, how I got through Spider-Man and Joan Rivers.
There we go. You started off with a whole bunch of really good stuff about the way companies should be looking at the way things are going, and then it all became very personal. I was just wondering how you see either companies helping that transition or people helping their companies to do that transition?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and they are intertwined, which is kind of why the presentation whistle stopped through. And I think there are different roles to play. So one is people who are leadership of companies, you know, they have to acknowledge that this is the world and this is what's going on. Some do, some don't. Having said I wasn't going to mention Trump politics, personally, I feel, you know, DEI is a hot topic. Love it or hate it, there is a part of that which is about embracing this kind of openness to look at it, which I fear we can get lost in some places. I know most companies really got a big dilemma about L&D and how they get into this world of continuous learning. I can't tell you how many arguments and debates I've had with recruitment and hiring pieces about them differently about how you hire. I'll tell you now, I had to fight a battle a year ago to get minimum requirement that someone had a bachelor's degree off senior level hiring requirement, which bachelor's degrees are great. I have one. It's not the be all and end all. There are many, many other things if you attribute high. There's massive amounts of change that have to happen in companies, big or small, around this about where the industry is going. And to be quite honest, I think that's one of the reasons why big tech and big consulting are struggling, because they cannot get their head around it at all. They can't pivot. And then I think you flow down. I touched a little bit on leadership. I mean, there's a whole other conversation about being a leader in this space. But people who are leading people have got a responsibility to understand it as well. And I think people find it really difficult to get their heads around, because being a leader, you're also an individual who's feeling it themselves. So it's like, you know, you got a horrible analogy going through my head about saving people on the Titanic. You know, you save yourself first, you save others. What do you do? It's super hard. And I think there are certain techniques as leaders that we've got to develop as well around how do you think differently? How do you think more compassionately? How do you be more open? How do you talk about what's going on in the world? How do you help people reskill and understand their own strengths?
But how do you get that across to existing leaders?
Well, if I do a plug for my corporate work, I go and talk to C-suite about it. But yeah, it's conversations. It's hiring people to be put into a team who think like that, who can see it. Sometimes it's just very starkly, if you don't do this, your numbers will die. You know, there are just some real conversations that have to happen at C-suite. The bigger problem I think that we had in my previous world actually wasn't C-suite, it was the next level down. And it's getting it into the people who are like, but I'm working 14-hour days and you're asking me to do this, you're asking me to do this, and you're asking me to do this. But it's this reality that if we don't, there'll be no jobs for people. You know? So it's a really hard question. I don't have a great answer to it, other than conversations, thinking very differently about L&D, thinking very differently about recruitment, spending time with leaders, prioritizing this. But it's very real. If we don't do this, there will be a talent crisis. There will be 97 million people displaced. There will be 170 million gaps. It's a bad place to be.
Jillian, I'm going to ask you a very long question. Be patient. Yeah. I live long enough to go through the transition from manual to computerization. I was born and grew up in Hong Kong. I used to be secretary, right? Yeah. Then the PC took over. And all of a sudden, the manager started doing their own typing and they started making their own coffee. So, but for us, I mean, maybe it's a culture. We just think, well, instead of insisting our organization, they still need secretaries or typists. I went to get a degree and an MSc, and then I was fortunate enough to get a PhD in computer science, and then the rest is history. So I went through the transition from knew nothing about IT to become an IT professional, which is like that in the 90s, yeah. So most of you probably guess my age now. My question to you is now, if people that you working IT, project manager, business analyst, architect, now we've got AI. Do you have any advice? What's the transition from them as an IT professional to become an AI, robotic, or quantum professional? What courses they need to reskill, upskill? what degree they need to get, or what kind of diploma, whatever qualification they need to get. I would like you to share some kind of roadmap to the people now, like me, 35 years ago, to share.
That's a huge question. And also,
Thank you very much.
one of the things that I often talk about in the BCS committees is the role that BCS can play in this, because we can help develop those kind of career pathways for reskilling.
Yeah.
I think there are different parts to that though, because I don't think everybody doing any of those kind of jobs will just land in AI. Right? I think if you're gonna get into Gen AI today, which is all about prompt engineering and so on, it's actually much more about creative thinking, creative writing. It's
Touring, yeah.
yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? It's less about the technical brain going into that and more about the creative brain going into it, which is a massive shift for the industry. I think I would say to people, there was something I put up here about core skills and attributes, right? What's it? That one, right? Core skills. I would start with saying, right, as an individual, what are your core skills? What are things, because not everybody will have all 10, nobody will have all 10.
Business analysis.
Yeah, what are your core skills? Okay. And then how do your core skills map into some of those roles that are happening
In 2030.
in 2030? So don't just go, well, I'm this and I'm that. Break it down, go back to what are my core attributes? What am I really good at? Am I good at people management? Am I good at creative thinking? Am I good at being analytical? What is it that I'm good at? Take away that label, that technical skill that we've always had, and then say, okay, well, if I look at some of these careers, how does that map back in? And how do I go retrain in that? And then there is duty on employers who don't have enough of these people to say, how do we think openly and not just go, well, that to that, but actually, oh, I'm looking at these kind of skills. How do I bring them in and reskill them? But my advice, the short answer to a long and complicated question is break it back down into what are your attributes and where do they go?
They have to still keep the technical.
You might do. Go on,
So,
in a minute.
sorry, it ties into that. Actually, I've written it down earlier. Is there not a paradox then? Because you said you can't teach these skills, but yet you're expecting people to go and learn them. So my question I'd written down was how much of those top 10 skills and core skills about that are vocational experiences, or are they things that they are character attributes?
Well, don't throw my words back at me. That's cool. I think, if I answer that honestly, I think it's like a muscle that you can develop. So some people have got bodies and muscles that are more suited for endurance, some more suited for speed. We've all got all the same muscles, but some are more suited in different ways. I think some of these skills are like that, right? So it's about breaking down what are your muscles more suited towards, and then how does someone help you train those muscles to get better? That's the teaching bit. You can't sort of teach it from scratch, but you can help people develop that muscle. And I think some of it is vocational, some of it is situational. I go back to my finding side gigs, side jobs. A lot of my stuff doesn't come from my core job. You know, it comes from dealing with what we do at London Sport. It comes from running marathons. I know I'm supposed to bring it back to running marathons, but the stuff I learn about myself in terms of what I have to deal with and how to prepare and so on, it comes from different places. And so I think it's about working out which ones of those, I've gone off the attributes now, but which of those kind of muscles that you've got, and then looking for opportunities to develop it. But it's not an all conventional course. It's got to be situations, it's got to be vocations, it's got to be things that you take on that help you embrace them.
And that's an attitude. That's not as much as it is anything else, because you have to want to.
And my whole, if I leave people with only one thing out today, it's that mindset shift about curiosity, core attributes, thinking about yourself in that way, instead of thinking like, I'm a business analyst, I'm a programmer, I'm this. You've got to think about yourself in a different way. Maybe some questions at the back. I'm going to share.
Any thoughts on future IT roles related to environmental sustainability?
Another one of my previous lives. I think that's going to go two ways. I think there'll be a massive piece. Okay, let me tell you first of all where I hope it's going to go. I hope it's going to go where environmental sustainability is embedded in just about every role. in the same way that I think DEI should be embedded in just about every role. So I think there's one aspect of that. If we work in, even if you like work in technical architecture and you're setting up data centers, you can work out how they can be more green. Right? There is an environmental aspect to everything that we should do in this industry. I think there will be some specialist roles in organizations that are very focused on sustainability. So if you look at some of the energy companies out there, they're going to have divisions that are really focused on how do we make this energy more sustainable. And there will be a role particularly for data, AI, IT in that space as well. But I think those kind of roles will be very heavily data-led, very heavily AI-led. There's something on there about the rise of Internet of Things specialists as well. I think there's a big intersection between IoT specialism and sustainability, certainly from some of the work that we were doing in my old world in the last couple of years. So I think, yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, but I think there's two ways. Some of them will be very specific roles and some of them will be more general. Let's embed sustainability in everything we do.
What about ethics? BCS is pushing ethics. How do we embed ethics more into people's brains, first of all, and get them thinking about that more?
I don't know how you can be the sort of leader who can deal with this without being ethical. Because I don't know how, wrong slide. I don't know, there was something on here about, I don't remember which slide it was, but there's some stuff around, how do you deal with this kind of stuff? It's not traditional anymore. It's purpose driven. It's people first. It's what people want. It has to be more ethical, otherwise this doesn't work. This is the whole point of traditional management models no longer work. You can't control people by fear or just by straightforward KPIs or whatever. You need to enable them through purpose. You need to enable them through helping them to be creative. You need to enable them to be able to move with the times and do. You can't put people in boxes and ask them to do something anymore. And for me, ethics goes hand in hand with that. Because if you're going to work in this more kind of fluid, open, people-centric way, it has to be ethical. So I think there's a point as an individual that if you want to get on and you want to actually cope with this kind of world, you've got to know your own values, your own ethics. If you're a leader, you need to think about that as well. One online, go on.
Any recommendations regarding where's the best place to get professional coaching and advisory if somebody needs more guidance?
Well, I would say start with BCS, wouldn't I? That's part of the point of the organisation. I think there is some good stuff on BCS that can help you with that. There's some different channels that you can go, mentoring, all that kind of stuff. I think beyond that, I mean, there's some great books. There's actually some great stuff on LinkedIn. You know, you could do worse than join some of the channels on LinkedIn and see some of the stuff that pops up and see where that takes you as different connections. It can be a rabbit warren, but you can see some fascinating stuff. So yeah, I mean, I will offer myself up as well. You can find me, the end slide had my LinkedIn on. I'm always happy to help if I can. You can look me up on LinkedIn and drop me a mail, and I'm always happy to do a call or something. But I'm not the answer to everybody on this call's mentoring. But definitely BCS, definitely. I mean, LinkedIn is great for it, and talk to people in your own organisations about it as well. I'm sure Jillian could probably find some links in BCS to send to people that will be useful in that kind of way as good places to start.
BCS Hertfordshire.
There you go. That's the answer to the question. If you want help, go to BCS Hertfordshire. They're in the room. They're rocking it.
I was thinking with some of your slides, you're saying they're reducing the graduate intake. And I was thinking with some of the people I've met in computing have had strange degrees and they've just fallen into computing. So I was wondering with that, sort of reducing that graduate input, whether there's going to be a risk further on to companies that they're missing out on sections of the population that could fill the higher roles.
I massively so. So I have 2 computer science degrees. I've been in tech consulting my entire career, and I've always been in the minority. The people around me have usually been accountants or psychologists or whatever, and been brilliant at it. Quite frankly, I don't use anything I learned in my degree. I learned to program in Ada 95. That's not really the most useful thing in today's environment. So absolutely. And I do think that, back to your point about what should companies do, there needs to be a massive revolution in hiring strategies in these companies. Absolute revolution to look at different places and different backgrounds and more ethnic based. Hugely. It's terrible at the moment. Well,
I was just following on from that question, actually. I was wondering if there maybe needs to be a rethink in the educational settings in terms of what you mentioned about the core skills, so to promote those in colleges, universities, and on the flip side, maybe embed some of the technical skills in maybe non-technical degrees to attract the kind of people that have that, maybe that ability.
I absolutely agree. I do what little I can because it's something I feel very passionate about. I know the BCS is looking at how they can better help universities link up with the reality of employment, which is essentially that point. I think there's definitely something else you just said that triggered something as well. What was the last thing you said?
About embedding the technical skills in non-technical courses.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the other thing that I think that the industry could do with is a rebranding, different marketing exercise. And whether this is something that the BCS will look at, I don't know. But the number of times I talk to people and they've done, there's a guy I was mentoring not that long ago, he was doing a degree in music technology. And he had no concept that he could come into my kind of world. And I'm like, my God, the digital agencies would fall over themselves to hire you. Right? Your concept of like bringing music into what you're doing and how it plugs into the experience and so on. No concept. He was like, I don't want to go into IT. By the end of it, it's like, how do I get a job? But, you know, I can't personally go around and talk to every single person in a different degree course. There needs to be a massive rebranding of what we do. Because entirely my point is this is not about the core tech skills anymore. This is actually a really exciting, huge industry with a massive amount of opportunity if you think about it a bit differently. And we just need different campaigns to talk about it.
So,
You can ask me a difficult question.
no, I'm not. No, not at all. Not at all. So, oh yes, I am. What was the seventh C? Because you only had 6 up there.
That's the hidden secret. That's the man in security to spot the fundamental flaw.
No, that's not the one I'm going to ask. So I totally agree with you about the hiring policies needing to change totally. That's been true for a long, long time, actually. But how much chance is that it's going to happen without terrible fallout of companies that don't change quickly enough, given how long it's been necessary and how people are inured? So I think there's going to be horrible fallout before it gets to be the survival of the fittest, as it were.
I think, you know, there's another thing when you talk about change that there has to be a compelling event to make it happen. And you can try and change, but if you don't have the compelling event, you're screwed. I think what's happening in the world at the moment is the compelling event.
Okay.
I actually think that a lot of the big companies cannot survive in the way that they're structured and the way that they do business. The clever ones will manage to get past it. The non-clever ones will be done. They'll be the Woolworths of this, the Kodaks of this world. I think that is genuinely happening at this moment.
I think that's very funny because one of the jobs I was offered when I left university was at Kodak.
In their time.
Were.
But you know, they chose the wrong path to change. And I genuinely think that is where we are at in this industry over the next 2 to 3 years with what's happening. I do not think, you know, with all those outside factors and going on and fundamental changes away from the offshore model and into the AI model and global, they can't survive. So I hope a compelling event is happening that is going to drive that change and that the clever ones will take it on board. I don't know. We've got to Armageddon. Is that probably a good place to start? Thanks so much, everybody.
That's great. And lots of food for thought, of course. But I want to ask a question, or BCS Hertfordshire. So how do you think you're relatively new in terms of BCS and so on. How do you think BCS is helping people to cope with their careers and changes? If you don't answer, I'll pick on you during the break time and ask you the same again. But, you know, I would really like to know from young people, how can the BCS do better about helping with the world of change, with the world of ethics, with the world of what should I do? How can I help? All that sort of thing. Anybody else got an opinion?
It's,
Are you a young person?
no, I'm not, but I am in some ways. So
Young man.
basically, they can't because they won't be able to move fast enough because they're too bureaucratic.
Too bureaucratic.
I think BCS need to modernize the CPD module. You know, for the continuous professional development, people get the accreditation. The modules and curriculum should reflect what's going on now. For example, Jillian mentioned about quantum, prompt engineering, big data analytics, that kind of thing. So to as a part of their CPD for the BCS member and CITP. So BCS should offer this kind of modules to as a part of their CPD. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I would say that's not just about young people. Another one of my crusade straight soapboxes is the fact there's a hell of a lot of buzzwords thrown around, and it's all a bit Emperor's New Clothes. People in senior positions are like, oh yeah, prompt engineers and this, that, and the other, and they're quite scared that they don't know what it's about. And I think there's definitely training just in terms of what these things actually really are that could be out there for everybody, not just young people. Yeah.
Okay. Arvind.
So I think for at least young people in universities, where BCS could help is by providing that latest update of learning, the framework, you know, to get guidance. So like the CPD, for example, it's very important. Like in Hertfordshire, at least, all our events are CPD based. But then, you know, some people are like, the topics, is it more latest? Is it going to guarantee me a job? It's always the big question. Is it going to
Career ready.
upskill my career? It's always the biggest question right now. And then you apply for jobs in the area, and then, for example, JP Morgan might say, oh, I'm looking for this, but then you're like, my degree only covers this, and BCS only covered this many skills. They've done everything on the website, and they okay, well, you know, I need to figure out that skill. So if as a community of professionals to cover those latest trends that we're looking for, it would really help with industry.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just a quick one, Dan. As a consultant, I work with humongous numbers of different companies, most of whom have never heard of the BCS. Which, you know, I mean, obviously it's beholden
cleaning services.
Yes, it's beholden upon me to try and educate them, but it worries me that we are talking about the industry, whereas and educating the industry, whereas the industry doesn't know about us. Great chunks of it don't.
Anyone else? Comments?
I was thinking with young people, I'm a member of a club, and of course it has to be use of computers and technology like cameras and things, and notice that a lot of things nowadays, people take them, but they don't really key into the thought processes of how should this really be working? Is it working properly? How does it work? What makes it work? What does it need? So they haven't got that sort of, haven't got the ability to model things like that in their minds so that they can use technology effectively.
Which brings us back to Jillian's thinking in terms of our brains, our adaptability, our creativity, and so on. Well, that is indeed food for thought, and I know I've got to wrap this up now because we have to go next door. But please join me again in thanking Jillian for her creativity, and I do wonder, why didn't she take up hurdling, which surely is much more work into our industry than simply running in straight lines?
High rocks next.
Well, thank you.
We've got lots more things coming out. You'll find out about them through the usual ways you find out about things. But we have, I think, 3 more things coming up in July. But the one that I must tell you about, I don't think you'll have seen. It's tomorrow. We actually, and it's sold out, or there are no tickets available, but it's here. It's an all-day conference starting at, I think it's 10 o'clock. And it features the University of Northumbria and of Brunel.
Yeah, Brunel.
Yeah. And it's a load of stuff about AI, the future, and so on, and how their students are coping with it. It's the sort of thing along the lines of a student showcase of things as well. If you want to come and see me. You have to give me your name and email and so on. It is tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock, through till about 4 or 5 o'clock. You don't have to come for all of it. You can dip in and out, but I know that they have at least 5 places available. So that's tomorrow, and then there are other things coming up. The one that I want to mention to you is, you might know my rant about why we're doing all this. One of the aspects that Jillian showed was about the SDGs and the World Economic Forum, the Sustainable Development Goals and so on. And we've got a lady called Dr. Husna Ahmed, who has spoken to the United Nations and so on about the Sustainable Development Goals. She's going to come and tell us what the status is of those. And of course, because we're in the era of AI, how AI relates to some of them. So that's one which is coming up later in July. But coming up right now immediately, food and drink next door. It's for you. Please come and partake of it.